Good morning, everyone. Love it. Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. And thank you very much, Nermeen, for organizing this fantastic event. And finally, big thank you to you, Dean, for all that you've done in the entire, for the entire INSEAD community for the last 10 years. Let's give him a hand. So, here we are. All of us are successful. I assume that most of us are also reasonably wealthy. And many of the organizations that we lead are also wealthy and successful. We're here today to reflect about the relationship between purpose and wealth. So, how about you? Are the companies that you're leading only focused on creating wealth? Or do they also have purpose at their core? Do you feel that you have purpose in your life and in your job? As I was preparing this speech, I look back at the important messages that I've heard many times during my career. And one that stood up was, the only thing that matters is the bottom line. How much profit a company makes, how much it grows its revenue. But in my experience, just as money doesn't really make anyone happy, profitability alone is a poor indicator of a company's long-term success and its resilience. Looking only at the bottom line is like measuring the beauty of a digital image by the number of pixels it carries, or the happiness in a relationship by the number of years it had lasted, or the wonder and achievement of a child by how tall it is, or whether it scored well in a standardized test. At every single step of my life, my career, I've seen this kind of thinking is a shortcut. It is simplistic. Even in the corporate world, especially in the corporate world. Let's remember what it means to have purpose. Having purpose is the difference between existing and living intentionally. And it's fundamentally linked to being human. In the big mysteries of our lives, the short time that we have on earth, purpose fills our lives with something bigger than ourselves. It makes us feel our lives are worth living, and that we contribute to the human story beyond our own limitations. Purpose is having the faith that we can build something better and feeling one has a role to play in it. But let me be honest, there was a time I personally had no purpose. I had a job that was not fulfilling. We were growing, we were profitable, but I oftentimes asked myself, why do I come to work every day? How am I useful to the world? And what legacy am I creating for future generations? And so for 1 year, I changed from the corporate world to the NGO world. I helped children. I worked as a teacher in a school for immigrants. And I was part of a foundation that helped NGOs be more sustainable. But I was really impatient back then. I wanted immediate results and have a big impact. And so there were many occasions when I felt that the pace at which NGOs were moving was too slow for me. And so I went to INSEAD to really rethink what I can do. At Fontainebleau, I was looking for answers. Can there be real purpose in a wealth-creating world like corporations? Can wealth and purpose be two sides of the same coin? Or when it comes down to a choice, will wealth always take priority? I remember back then, people started to discuss the need to switch from a shareholder capitalism to a stakeholder capitalism, towards a capitalism that helped beyond the profit motive, where a corporation should be about more than wealth creation, to also improve the well-being of societies and the planet. I realized I had to find companies that aligned with my own values, with my own North Star. Many corporations had clearly really good intentions, but they were light on concrete action. And that's when I realized that I should stay in the corporate world and try to affect change there. Because change, we must. It's never been more urgent. Just take climate change. The science, the data are clear. And I assume that all of you have seen the latest UN report. If we want to avoid the worst of climate change, if we want to contain global warming at 1.5 degrees, then we all just have 7 years left to reduce the world's greenhouse emissions by 43%. And our world is way off track. Our own survival, the future of humanity, is at stake. And I hope we all realize that it is now or never when purpose and wealth must go hand in hand. But change is possible. I know it is. I think we all here in this room know that change is possible. It will happen faster when everyone understands how closely linked purpose and wealth are. During my career, I've worked in 5 different industries, in 9 different countries, in 3 different continents. I have learned that to measure wealth, the potential, and the resilience of a company, you must look beyond the stock market capitalization and how much money is in the bank. There are some people who see improving the world around us as other people's problems. But even if you look at it in pure financial terms, the wealth equation has to start with fundamentals like sustainability. A company that does not have a path to decarbonization now carries a fundamental business risk. And it goes way beyond that. Today, a company's wealth, its resilience, the value of its brand are also determined by its people, by its purpose, and by what it does to this planet, meaning what it does for consumers, society, and for the environmental alike. That means diversity and inclusion. It means listening to all our stakeholders, taking into account their concerns, thinking how we can empower them, whether they work on the shop floor or in the production line, whether they live in communities around us, or whether they are representing those who have no opportunity to speak. Often, it is companies with great purpose that achieve the greatest success. Most importantly, purpose has to be more than a greenwashing slogan or a few fancy pictures in an ESG report. Purpose has to result in action, because only action wins trust, and trust is the real driver of business success. Trust is way more important than a company's reputation. One single significant misstep done by a company, and it can destroy its reputation. In contrast, a company that is trusted by its partners, consumers, stakeholders, will be granted the time it needs to put things right. And that's why a business needs purpose: to generate wealth, and to protect wealth, and to make its employees live every day with light in their eyes. Purpose has guided me throughout my life. I have always tried to work for companies that have strong human values, a purpose and a soul, companies that will have a positive impact, companies that listen, that are prepared to change, to play a higher, better game all around. That's also why I joined Decathlon, because it is one of those companies that gives energy to wake up every day and join the many teammates to make a difference together. An example of this is now, for the first time, we are evaluating our employees not just by their economic performance, but also by what they are doing for the planet as well. But here's the thing about purpose. Whether that's about sustainability, diversity, the impact on societies and people, or any other of these big topics, the problems look huge. The problems of our world look unsurmountable. And that's where our responsibility as business leaders begin. Leaders need to have a firm belief that it is possible to change, that there is no mountain high enough that we can climb. This optimism is a must to give hope to people so that they contribute, join a movement full of energy, and believe that the impossible is possible. Of course, pretending that everything will be all right is not enough. We also have to continue solving these challenges through action, through our own behavior, at every level. By practicing inclusion, demonstrating the benefits of diversity, by rapidly and radically decarbonizing our operations, by shifting our business models towards regeneration, from one that is built on obsolescence to one that is rooted on circular economy. It's about achieving something, making it possible to save our planet, and building a human story that we can all be proud of together. When it comes to delivering on the promises of purpose, a lot of people hope that the technology will be the great solver of problems. And indeed, with the speed of technological change, it is speeding up. However, technology also creates gaps in society. There are definitely a few trickle-down effects of technology. So, as we deploy technology, as we accelerate innovation, we must not see it simply as yet another opportunity to maximize profits. Instead, we have to reimagine mobility, reimagine energy consumption, reimagine the efficiency on how we live and how our business operate so that they are sustainable. I spoke about climate change, but for many people, that actually means water consumption. Did you know that by 2025, 2 out of 3 people could experience restrictions or even total disruption of water supply? It's quite scary, right? And challenges like this are not only for governments to solve. People also look at us, to companies, to organizations for answers. It's through our action. It's through our leadership. It's through our purpose that we earn trust and ultimately create wealth. Yes, financial wealth, but most importantly, societal wealth. Around the world, in every single country, and now across all generations, people demand that companies create value for society, not just their shareholders. And that's why purpose also requires transparency. I recently read an interesting report by an organization called Planet Tracker. It highlighted the many ways how organizations are greenwashing these days. There is green crowding, green lighting, green shifting, green rinsing, and even green hashing. There's no need for me to explain all these terms, but here's what they have in common. They are labels for companies that pretend to have purpose, but don't follow up purpose with action. And yes, that may work for a few years, but sooner or later, it will destroy trust. And then it will destroy wealth, and ultimately, it might also destroy our world. Here's the ultimate test for all of us. Can you look in the eyes of a child and explain to them what your business is really doing, whether it is helping or harming us? Can you say you're doing everything you can? Can you tell them with honesty, authenticity, and sincerity? Now, I am an optimist. I know that change is possible. I have seen it happen at every company where I've worked. What companies need to realize is that change does not have to wait for government regulations. We all here in this room are the business leaders of today. It is in our power to create this change, to turn purpose statements into real, meaningful, tangible action. Because that's how you create wealth. Because that's how you make lives worth living. With honesty, with integrity, and with light. Through purpose, for people, and for the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. I love the exercise of justifying your professional activity to your kids. That's a good mental model. Some questions coming in. So first one is just to dig a little deeper. Have you encountered situations where it looks like there's a trade-off between wealth, financial wealth, and purpose? How do you manage those situations of trade-offs?
Yes, absolutely. They are present, I would say, every day in my job. Right now, I'll give you the example of Decathlon. We have decided to put at the same level financial goals, human goals, and planet goals. And so we are making it live through incentives as well as other mechanisms in the company. So with equal weight now, every single employee has its bonus, its incentives actually linked to these three aspects of what value creation is. Our CFO is not longer a CFO, is a chief value officer. So now value, we see it as these three aspects all combined together. And so Decathlon sells products for now firsthand. And so an example here is to say, okay, how can we go circular business? And how can we redesign every single product to actually go zero carbon in a few years? So we're taking actually the hard route, instead of just selling volume, to redesign every single product so that we maximize the durability, we decarbonize, and we actually build up all the circularity, because we believe that materials need to come back into the business for a second use, a third, and a fourth. So it's a massive transformation, and at the same time, the determination could have been bigger for actually doing this. The employees themselves are asking it. It's from the bottoms up, it's from the top down. So we need an answer and an acceleration, and we don't have a lot of time.
Very good. Just another question coming in. How can we get from good intentions to real change? I think you just brought up one, which is actually building this into the incentives, the language. Any other thing you'd highlight in terms of going from intention to action in the corporate space?
Yes, so Decathlon is a private company, but we actually have actions. So we have a valuation of the company every single year. We actually have built into the value of the company equally the planet and the financial aspect. So now the wealth creation also of the company is looking beyond the financial terms. The second thing is when we take a decision in any aspect now, we are trying to have a bit of a checklist. So we have been trained, I would say, to maximize financially the company at every single decision. So we need actually now to have a bit of a guideline in decision making at every level to say, okay, yes, we will grow more, but we would actually decrease, or we would decrease the acceleration from a planet perspective. So is there another way? Okay, what is the trade-off? And how do we take this route? Because we are equally incentivized and our goals are ABC at the same time.
Great. Last question. We're in London, obviously still a global financial center. So you mentioned Decathlon is privately controlled. Do you think public capital markets today still, despite the change, make it harder to reconcile performance and profit?
I believe there's a positive and a negative. So when a company is traded in financial markets, there is definitely a short-term incentive. Every quarter, the earnings are looked. And so it might put a pressure that doesn't allow companies to look long-term. So definitely not having that pressure is freeing. And so one can build over, the long term. But at the same time, I'm seeing the possibility to raise capital that allows for faster transformations of companies. Because transform we must, and there is quite a bit of reinventing how we operate companies and how we transform to be sustainable over the long term. And the second thing that I see is that there is a lot of ESG investment happening in the market as well. So somehow the trend is helping as well make companies realize and be accountable for very important aspects into how we should run our companies nowadays.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barbara Martin Coppola, thank you so much. Wonderful.